The fraud alert came while I was standing in my mother's empty bedroom, holding the dress she had planned to wear to my daughter's graduation. At first, I thought the bank was warning me about some small charge. Gas station, online order, something irritating but fixable. Then the woman on the phone asked whether I had authorized a $19,400 transfer from my mother's estate account to a business account in Boise, Idaho. I remember looking down at the dress in my hands. It was navy blue with tiny white flowers, still in the dry cleaner's plastic. My mother had been dead for 32 days. I said, "No." The woman paused in that careful way people do when their job suddenly becomes someone else's disaster. Then she said the transfer had been approved using my wife's login. My wife, Elena, was downstairs in my mother's kitchen, wrapping coffee mugs in newspaper like nothing in the world was wrong. For 13 years, Elena had been the person I trusted when I could not trust myself. She knew how to make a hospital room feel less cold. She remembered which bills came out on which day. She sent thank you cards after funerals, brought casseroles to sick neighbors, and held my hand under tables when conversations became too much. When my mother got sick, Elena became useful in the way people praise. "She's a blessing," my aunt told me outside the ICU. I believed that. Maybe I needed to. My mother, Ruth, had raised me alone in a yellow house outside Bend, Oregon. Not a pretty yellow, a tired yellow that looked different depending on the sun. She worked at the county clerk's office for 29 years and kept every receipt in labeled envelopes. She did not have much, but what she had was organized, stubborn, and paid for. After she died, I inherited the house, a modest retirement account, and a small savings account she had called Mia's Future. Mia was our daughter, 17, smart, impatient, always pretending not to care and caring too much anyway. Mom had wanted that money to help with college. Elena knew that. Everyone knew that. The coffee mugs were Mom's thing. She had dozens of them, none matching. One from Yellowstone, one shaped like a cat, one with "World's Okayest Gardener" printed in faded green letters. Every time we visited, she poured coffee into whatever mug she thought matched your mood. Mine was usually the chipped blue one with a crooked mountain painted on the side. After the funeral, I kept using it. I would stand in Mom's kitchen before sunrise, drinking bad coffee from that mug while sorting through drawers full of rubber bands, batteries, old birthday candles, and coupons that expired years earlier. Elena teased me gently. "You're turning into your mother," she said one morning. "I can think of worse things." She smiled, but not fully. I should have noticed that. The weeks after Mom died were blurry and practical. Death turns people into clerks. You cancel utilities. You order certificates. You call insurance companies and sit on hold listening to cheerful music that feels offensive. You decide what to keep, what to donate, and what to put in boxes because deciding feels too final. Elena handled so much of it that I felt grateful in a dull, exhausted way. She made spreadsheets. She contacted the estate attorney. She helped me open the temporary account for Mom's remaining funds. She said it would be easier if she had access too, just in case I missed something while dealing with work and Mia's school forms. I said yes. That was the part I kept returning to later. I said yes. I gave her the login because she was my wife, because my mother had trusted her, because I was tired, because every ordinary marriage is built on 1,000 small permissions you do not imagine becoming weapons. The warning signs were not dramatic. Elena started taking calls in the garage, even when it was cold. She said her sister was going through another crisis. She came back inside smelling like rain and driveway dust. Phone pressed against her chest, like it had been startled. She began asking odd questions about Mom's house. Do you think you'll sell it quickly? Would you ever rent it out? Would Mia really want to go out of state for college? I thought she was trying to help me plan. Once, 2 weeks after the funeral, I found her sitting alone at Mom's kitchen table with the chipped blue mountain mug in front of her. She was not drinking from it, just turning it slowly by the handle. When I asked if she was okay, she said, "I just don't want you making decisions from guilt." It sounded reasonable. Elena always sounded reasonable. That was her talent. She could wrap control in concern so neatly that you thanked her for tying the knot. At home in Portland, things had been strained for longer than I wanted to admit. I worked as a facilities supervisor for a regional hospital network, which meant my phone rang whenever pipes burst, elevators failed, or someone discovered water coming through a ceiling at 2 o'clock in the morning. Elena managed admissions for a private preschool. Her job required sweetness all day, which meant she had very little left by evening. We were not cruel to each other. That almost made it harder. We were polite, efficient, useful. We asked whether the dishwasher was clean, whether Mia needed a ride, whether the car had enough gas. We touched in passing, the way people touch furniture in a familiar room. I told myself grief made everything feel worse. Then the fraud alert came. I walked downstairs slowly, still holding Mom's dress. Elena was at the kitchen counter wrapping mugs. Newspaper covered the table. The chipped blue mountain mug sat by the sink, washed and upside down on a towel. "Elena," I said. She looked up. There was a strip of tape stuck to her sleeve. "What's wrong?" I asked her about Boise. Just that. One word. Her face did not fall apart. It tightened. Not much. Just enough for me to understand she knew exactly what I meant. She said, "What about Boise?" I stood there with my mother's dress over my arm, listening to the refrigerator hum in the corner. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked twice and stopped. "The estate account," I said. $19,400. She looked down at the mug in her hand. It was the Yellowstone one. Mom had bought it on a trip she took alone at 63 because she said she was tired of waiting for someone to come with her. Elena set the mug on the counter carefully. "That's not what it sounds like." I almost laughed, but nothing came out. People say that when it is exactly what it sounds like. She told me she had moved the money temporarily. She said there was an investment opportunity, a short-term loan, a business that needed bridge funding. She said she meant to tell me after the funds returned. She said the timing was terrible, but the opportunity could not wait. I asked whose business. She rubbed her forehead. "Caleb's." I did not know any Caleb. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was thinking Caleb was the betrayal. Elena said he was an old friend from college. She said he had opened a small wellness studio in Boise and needed help covering a licensing delay. She said the money would be back in 10 days with interest. "Elena," I said quietly. "That was Mia's college money." Her eyes flashed then. Not guilt, irritation. Not all of it. The sentence landed harder than I expected. Not all of it. As if stealing half of a future was restraint. I placed Mom's dress over the back of a chair because my hands had started shaking. Elena reached toward me, then stopped when I stepped back. "You're making this worse than it is," she said. I looked at the boxes stacked against the wall. Mom's books. Mom's towels. Mom's winter coats. A life reduced to labels in black marker. "I didn't make the transfer," She closed her eyes. I was trying to fix something. What? She did not answer. The silence that followed was not empty. It was packed full. I could feel things moving inside it, old lies shifting behind new ones. At 7:22 that evening, while Elena was in the bathroom, her phone lit up on the kitchen table. I did not pick it up. I only read what appeared on the screen, called Calzoprim. Did he find the first transfer or the others? The first transfer or the others. The house was quiet around me. The coffee mug sat half-wrapped in newspaper. My mother's chipped blue mug was still upside down by the sink, drying like any ordinary thing. And for the first time since the funeral, I understood that grief had not made me blind. Trust had. I took a picture of the message with my own phone. Then I put Elena's phone exactly where it had been and waited for her to come back into the room. Elena came back into the kitchen with her hair twisted into a wet knot and one of my mother's old dish towels over her shoulder. She looked at me, then at her phone. Something in her face changed before I said a word. Not panic. Recognition. "You read it?" she said. I saw it. She picked up the phone and turned it face down on the table. "It doesn't mean what you think." I looked at the newspaper spread across the counter. Half of my mother's mugs were wrapped. The other half waited in a crooked row, handles facing different directions. Mom had always said you should pack mugs with socks because socks were soft and nobody ever remembered to pack them properly. I almost told Elena that. Instead, I said, "How many transfers?" She leaned against the counter. "I don't know." "That's not an answer." "I mean, I don't know exactly." For a few seconds, neither of us moved. The old wall clock above the stove ticked too loudly. It had belonged to my grandparents, and Mom kept it 5 minutes fast because she believed being early was a form of respect. Elena finally said there had been 3 transfers. The first was $19,400. The second was $6,800. The third was smaller, just under $3,000, almost $30,000. I sat down at the kitchen table because my knees suddenly did not feel reliable. "That account was for Mia," I said. Elena's eyes filled, but she did not cry. "I know." "Then why?" She looked toward the window. Outside, the porch light came on automatically. It made the yellow paint of Mom's house look pale and sickly. For 1 second, I could see our reflection in the glass. Me sitting at the table, Elena standing with her arms crossed, boxes everywhere between us. "Caleb was in trouble," she said. "Who is Caleb?" She pressed her lips together. "Someone I knew before you." That was not what I asked. I waited. She said they had gone to college together in Spokane. They had dated briefly before she moved to Portland. He had started a wellness studio in Boise with a business partner. The partner had disappeared with money. Caleb was behind on rent, payroll, and a licensing fee. If he could keep the business open for 1 more month, he would qualify for a larger investor payment. The story had too many pieces: licensing fee, investor payment, missing partner. It sounded like something people told themselves when they wanted a bad decision to feel temporary. "And you sent him my mother's money?" Elena looked at the table. "I was going to replace it." "With what?" "He promised." I held up my hand. She stopped. There are moments when a person's explanation becomes so thin that interrupting it feels kinder than letting them keep speaking. I asked whether she had seen Caleb. Her silence lasted maybe 3 seconds. It felt longer. "Yes," she said. "How often?" She swallowed. "Not like that." I looked at her. She added, "At first." At first. The words sat between us. I had expected anger. I had expected myself to yell, to demand names and dates and every ugly detail. Instead, I felt tired in a way I had never felt before. Not tired from work or grief. Tired from realizing I had been living beside someone who had been editing reality before handing it to me. I asked her when she had started talking to him again. Last fall. My mother was still alive last fall. She had been getting weaker, but she was alive. Elena had sat beside her at Thanksgiving, helped her carry plates into the kitchen, and laughed at her stories about the county office, all while texting someone she had dated before me. Elena said Caleb reached out after seeing a photo of Mom in the hospital on social media. He asked how she was doing. Elena said she had been overwhelmed, lonely, and scared. She said talking to him felt easy because he knew her before she became someone's wife and someone's mother and someone who spent her days solving other people's problems. I understood the sentence. That was what made it worse. I understood what it felt like to become a role in your own home. Husband, father, son, provider, person who remembered the insurance renewal and drove to the pharmacy. Sometimes I had looked at Elena across the room and felt like I had not asked her a real question in months. But understanding loneliness was not the same as forgiving what she had done with it. I told her I needed to see the bank records. She said she could show me tomorrow. No, I said. Tonight. She stared at me. You don't trust me. The words came out sharp, almost offended. I looked at the blue mountain mug drying by the sink. No, I said. I don't. She went upstairs to get her laptop. While she was gone, I opened the estate folder on the table. My mother's handwriting was on the front of an envelope inside it. For Mia, when the time is right. I had seen those words dozens of times since the funeral. That night, they looked different, less like a gift, more like an instruction I had failed to protect. Elena returned with the laptop and sat across from me. She logged into the estate account without looking at me. The transfers were there just as the bank had said, but there were more transactions than she had admitted. Payments to a Boise company called Cedar Ridge Wellness, a $4,700 charge to a hotel, several cash withdrawals, a transfer to an account labeled C. Dawson Consulting. Who is C. Dawson? I asked. Elena shut the laptop. That's Caleb's company. You said he owned a wellness studio. He does. Then why does he need a consulting company? She stood up so quickly that her chair pushed back against the wall. You don't understand how businesses work. No, I said. I don't understand why my wife is moving money from my dead mother's account to a man I've never heard of. Her face went white. For a moment, I thought she might finally tell me everything. Instead, she said, You weren't there for me. It was a cruel thing to say, but not because it was completely false. I had been at the hospital with Mom. I had worked overtime. I had spent evenings sorting medications, calling nurses, arguing with insurance companies. Elena had carried more of the house than I noticed. She had taken Mia to school events. She had made dinners I barely remembered eating. She had slept alone when I stayed overnight in Mom's hospital room. There were ways I had failed her. I knew that. But she had used those failures like a key, turning them in the lock of every question I asked. You could have told me you were lonely, I said. I tried. When? She looked away. That was the problem. Maybe she had tried in small ways. Maybe I had missed them. But she had not told me she was talking to Caleb. She had not told me she was sending him money. She had not told me she had turned my mother's death into an opportunity for someone else. At 11:40 that night, Elena packed a suitcase. She said she was going to stay with her sister, Dana, for a few days. She said we both needed space before we made things worse. I did not stop her. Mia was asleep at a friend's house for a school project, and I was grateful for that in a way that made me feel ashamed. I did not know how to explain any of this to her. I did not know how to tell my daughter that the money her grandmother saved for her was gone because her mother had been trying to save a man from another life. Before Elena left, she stood in the hallway holding the suitcase handle. "I love you," she said. I looked at her for a long time. Then I said, "I don't know what that means anymore." She nodded once and walked out. Her car backed down the driveway slowly. The red taillights disappeared past the mailbox, then around the corner. I locked the door after she left. Then I checked it twice. The next morning, I called the estate attorney. Her name was Priya Shah. My mother had chosen her years ago because, according to Mom, she looks you in the eye and doesn't pretend paperwork is magic. Priya listened while I explained the transfers. She did not interrupt except to ask for dates, account numbers, and whether Elena had written authorization to move money. She had not. When I finished, Priya was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You need to protect the remaining estate assets immediately." The phrase made my stomach turn. Protect. As if I had not been doing that. Priya explained that the estate account could be frozen temporarily while she reviewed the transfers. She said we needed copies of every statement, every login record, every document Elena had touched. She told me not to delete messages or confront Caleb directly. "Why not?" I asked. "Because you don't yet know what you're dealing with." I thought I did. I thought I was dealing with an affair and stolen money. I did not know that Elena had not sent Caleb the money because she loved him. Not exactly. 3 days later, Priya called me while I was at work. I was in the mechanical room of St. Vincent's Hospital, standing beside a leaking pipe and trying to explain to a contractor why sometime next week was not an acceptable repair schedule. My phone buzzed in my pocket. When I saw Priya's name, I stepped into the hallway. "I found something," she said. Her voice was controlled, but different. She had located a document connected to the $19,400 transfer. It was not a loan agreement. It was a payment toward a settlement. "What settlement?" I asked. "That's what I'm trying to determine." She told me the money had gone first to Caleb's consulting account, then moved within 48 hours to a law firm in Boise. The firm handled civil litigation. I leaned against the hallway wall. Was Caleb being sued? "I don't know," Priya said, "but someone was." That evening, I drove back to Mom's house. I had not planned to. I just found myself turning onto the road without thinking. The house was dark when I arrived. I sat in the driveway for a few minutes, watching the porch light shine against the empty windows. Inside, I went straight to the kitchen. The Blue Mountain mug was still on the drying rack. I picked it up and held it in both hands. Then I opened Mom's old desk drawer, the one where she kept stamps, paper clips, and the little notebook where she wrote down every phone call she thought might matter later. I did not know what I was looking for, but I knew my mother had believed in records. And somewhere in the middle of grief, money, and a man named Caleb, I had started to understand that Elena's first betrayal might not have been the worst one. My mother's desk had 3 drawers. The top one held stamps, pens, and the kind of rubber bands that had dried out years ago but were still too useful to throw away. The second drawer was full of old bills, appliance manuals, and a small flashlight that only worked if you hid it against your palm. The bottom drawer was locked. I had never noticed that before. The key was taped beneath the desk, exactly where my mother would have put it. She believed hiding something in plain sight was smarter than buying anything expensive. When I was a kid, she kept emergency cash inside an empty oatmeal container because, as she said, nobody steals oatmeal. The key turned easily. Inside the drawer was a black accordion folder labeled in her handwriting. If something doesn't add up, I sat down in her chair. For a moment, I could not open it. The house was too quiet. The refrigerator clicked on behind me. A truck passed on the road outside, tires hissing over wet pavement. I could smell the lemon cleaner Mom used on the counters, even though no one had cleaned them in weeks. Then I opened the folder. There were copies of bank statements, notes from phone calls, printouts from emails, and a yellow legal pad covered in dates. At the top of the first page, Mom had written, "Elena asked about the estate account before I was gone. Do not let Daniel feel guilty for checking." I read it twice, then a third time. My hands started to shake so badly I had to put the paper down. Mom had known. Not everything, maybe, but enough to be worried. The notes went back 6 months. At first, they were small. Elena had asked whether Mom's will had been updated. Elena had asked if Mia's college money could be managed more aggressively. Elena had asked whether the house was fully paid off. Mom had written beside one note. She smiled when she asked. That made it worse. I felt sick. I remembered Elena sitting at Mom's bedside, adjusting the blanket over her knees. I remembered Elena bringing her soup. I remembered Mom reaching for Elena's hand when the pain medication made her confused. I had thought they were close. Maybe they had been once. But near the end, something had changed. There was a printed email from Mom to Priya Shah, the estate attorney. It was dated 11 days before Mom died. The subject line was simple. Question about access. Mom had written that Elena had offered to help organize paperwork. She said she appreciated the help, but wanted to make sure that no one could move money intended for Mia without my approval. Priya had replied that Mom could create additional safeguards, but it would require an in-person appointment or notarized changes. Mom had written back that she was too tired to travel. At the bottom of the printed email, she had added a note in blue ink. Daniel thinks helping is the same as trusting. He gets that from me. I pressed my fingers against my eyes. I did not want that sentence to be true. But it was. I had spent most of my adult life believing that suspicion made you cold. My mother had been different. She loved people, but she checked the numbers. She could bring a casserole to someone's house and still ask whether they had paid back the money they borrowed. I had mistaken that for hardness when I was younger. Now I understood it was care with its eyes open. Near the bottom of the folder, I found a document from a Boise law firm, the same firm Priya had mentioned. It was not a settlement agreement exactly. It was a demand letter. The letter was addressed to Caleb Dawson. It accused him of misusing funds from a wellness company called Cedar Ridge Health Collective. The company had taken deposits from clients for a new location, then failed to open on time. Several clients wanted refunds. A former business partner claimed Caleb had moved money from the company account into personal accounts. The amount listed was $86,000. I stared at the number until it stopped looking real. There was a handwritten note clipped to the letter. E says he didn't steal it. Says partner did. Says lawyer needs $20,000 to settle before court. E. Elena. My mother had written this before she died. I did not know how she had learned it. Maybe Elena had talked too freely. Maybe Mom had overheard something. Maybe she had simply noticed the way Elena's face changed whenever money came up. At the bottom of the note, Mom had written one more line. If Elena gives him money, it won't be because she believes him. It will be because he knows something about her. I sat in that kitchen until it got dark. The folder stayed open in front of me. The Blue Mountain mug sat beside it, empty. My mother had not left me a neat answer. She had left me a warning. The next morning, I forwarded copies of everything to Priya. She called within an hour. "I need you to come in," she said. Her office was in downtown Bend, above a bookstore that always smelled like dust and cinnamon. I had been there with Mom twice. Both times, Mom had worn the same gray coat and carried a purse too large for her shoulder. Priya met me in the lobby. She did not offer coffee. I appreciated that. Inside her office, she laid out the documents in careful rows. "The estate account is now frozen," she said. "No more money can leave without review." I nodded. Then she slid a second document toward me. It was a copy of a loan application. My name was on it. At first, I did not understand what I was looking at. Then I saw the details. A personal loan for $48,000. Borrower, Elena Ward. Co-borrower, Daniel Ward. Purpose: home repair and debt consolidation. The application had been submitted 3 months earlier. My signature was on the last page. I had never seen it before. For a moment, I could not speak. The signature looked like mine. Not perfect, but close enough that someone who did not know me would not question it. Priya watched me carefully. "Did you sign this?" "No." She nodded once. "The loan was denied," she said. "But the application is relevant because it shows a pattern. Elena may have been trying to access credit before she used the estate account." I stared at my name. My own handwriting had been turned into something I had not agreed to. It was a small violation compared to the money, compared to the affair, compared to whatever Caleb knew. But it felt personal in a different way. Elena had not just lied to me. She had practiced becoming me. Priya told me we should not accuse Elena of forgery without more evidence. She said the denial letter and application would be preserved. She said we needed to focus on protecting the estate, Mia's funds, and my own credit. Then she asked whether I had spoken to Elena since she left. I said no. That was not entirely true. Elena had texted me every day. At first, the messages were careful. "I'm sorry. I know you're angry. Please don't tell Mia until we talk." Then they became more urgent. "Caleb is not who you think he is. I was trying to keep him from ruining all of us. There are things I should have told you years ago." I had not replied. The last message had come at 2:13 that morning. "Please don't go through Mom's papers." I had read it while sitting in Mom's kitchen, the folder open in front of me. She knew. Maybe she had always known what Mom suspected. Maybe she had searched the house after the funeral and failed to find the locked drawer. I showed the message to Priya. Her expression changed. "Years ago," she said quietly. "That may be the important part." I drove home after the meeting, but I did not go inside. I parked across the street from our house and watched the windows. Mia was at school. The curtains were closed. Elena's car was gone. For 13 years, I had thought I knew the shape of my marriage. I knew which floorboard creaked outside our bedroom. I knew Elena hated celery and soup. I knew she called her sister every Sunday afternoon and cried during animal rescue commercials. But there were whole sections of her life I had never been allowed to enter. I had been married to a person who kept doors inside herself locked. That afternoon, I called Dana. Elena's sister answered on the third ring. Her voice was cautious immediately. "Daniel, is Elena with you?" There was a pause. "No." I looked through the windshield at our house. She told me she was. "I know." Dana sounded tired. Not defensive. Not surprised. Tired. I asked where Elena was. Dana said she did not know. Then she said, "But I think you should know something before you find out another way." I closed my eyes. There had been too many sentences like that lately. Dana told me Caleb had not come back into Elena's life last fall. He had never really left it. They had been in contact on and off for almost 16 years. Before our wedding, during our first year of marriage, after Mia was born. Sometimes only messages, sometimes phone calls, sometimes more. I asked Dana why she had never told me. She started crying quietly. "I thought it was over," she said. Every time she said it was over. I held the phone tighter. Every time? Dana did not answer. She did not need to. The betrayal changed shape again. It was no longer a bad year. It was no longer grief, loneliness, or one terrible decision. It was history. A second life that had been folded into mine so carefully, I had mistaken the seams for ordinary marriage. Dana said Caleb had been in trouble before. Not always money trouble. Sometimes gambling, sometimes debt. Once, years ago, he had disappeared for months after promising Elena he would leave his girlfriend and start over with her. He always came back when he needed something, Dana said. And Elena always helped him? She thought she could save him. The sentence made me angry in a way I had not been before. Not because Elena wanted to save him, because she had let me become the cost of it. That night, I finally replied to Elena. I wrote only one sentence. "Where are you?" She answered almost immediately. "Boise." I stared at the word. Then another message appeared. "Caleb is gone. He took the money and left me with everything." I read it once. Then I read it again. For months I had imagined Caleb as the man Elena chose over me. Now I saw something worse. He had not been her escape. He had been the trap she kept returning to. And somehow, without my knowledge, she had tied my mother's money, my daughter's future, and my name to it. I put the phone down beside the blue mountain mug. Outside, rain began tapping against the windows. I knew I should have felt sorry for Elena. Part of me did. But another part had finally become still. Because Caleb being gone did not change what Elena had done. It only meant the bill had come due. Elena called me at 1:06 in the morning. I watched her name light up my phone until it stopped. Then she called again. The Blue Mountain mug was on the counter beside me. I had made coffee after midnight because sleep had become something other people did. The coffee was cold by the time I answered. "Daniel," she said. Her voice sounded wrong, thin, like she had been crying for hours and had finally run out of energy for it. "Are you safe?" I asked. There was a pause. "Yes." "Where are you?" "In a motel near the airport." I pictured her there without wanting to. A beige room. A bedspread with a pattern meant to hide stains. Her suitcase open on the floor. The kind of place people chose when they did not know where else to go. "Why did Caleb leave?" I asked. She let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. "Because that's what he does." It was the first honest thing she had said to me in days. She told me Caleb had left Boise 2 nights earlier. He had emptied the wellness studio's business account, taken the cash he could access, and driven away in a rented SUV. The landlord had changed the locks. The studio's employees had been told not to come back. A supplier was demanding payment. A lawyer had called Elena twice that afternoon. I listened without saying much. Then she said, "I didn't know he was going to do this." "You knew he was in trouble?" "Yes." "You knew he had debts?" "Yes." "You knew he had been lying to you?" Her silence was answer enough. I asked why she had gone to Boise. "I thought I could fix it." The words made my stomach turn. Fix it. Elena had spent years calling damage repair. She had called secrecy protection. She had called stealing temporary help. Every choice had a softer name until it reached someone else's life. "What did you sign?" I asked. She started crying. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just a small, broken sound that made me grip the edge of the counter. I almost told her to stop. Instead, I waited. Finally, she said, "I signed something for him." "What?" "A guarantee." I closed my eyes. "What kind of guarantee?" She said Caleb had convinced her that the wellness studio could survive if they bought out his former partner's share. The partner had threatened to sue. Caleb said he needed a guarantor for a private loan until an investor came through. Elena had signed as a guarantor. Then she had used my name as a second guarantor. I did not speak for several seconds. The refrigerator hummed. Rain hit the window. Somewhere upstairs, the heat clicked on. "Did you forge my name again?" I asked. "I thought it would only be temporary." "That is not an answer." "Yes." The word was so quiet I almost missed it. Yes. She had signed my name. Not once. Twice. The private loan was for $67,000. I sat down at the kitchen table. My mother's estate money had not gone to help Caleb with a licensing delay. It had been used to make early payments on a debt Elena had attached to my name. The $19,400 had gone to the law firm because Caleb's former partner had threatened civil action. The other transfers had covered interest, rent, and payments meant to keep the lender from contacting me. The apartment in Boise had never been part of some hopeful new beginning. It was a hiding place. Elena had rented it in her own name after Caleb told her he needed a local address to keep the business alive. She had spent weekends there, telling me she was visiting Dana or attending preschool admissions workshops. She had helped furnish it. She had bought towels, dishes, a cheap couch, and a coffee maker. The same coffee maker we had at home. For a moment, I could not breathe properly. I thought about all the mornings Elena had made coffee in our kitchen before leaving for a training weekend. I thought about the blue mountain mug, the one she had once said made her think of my mother. She had been building another kitchen while helping me pack up Mom's. "What else?" I asked. "Daniel." "What else?" She said nothing. I stood up. "Tell me now." "There's a second loan." The room seemed to tilt. This one was smaller. $24,000. It had been taken out through Caleb's consulting company 6 months earlier. Elena said she had used some of the money to pay off the first loan temporarily, then moved money around again when Caleb promised an investor was coming. It was not a plan. It was a hole. Every time she tried to cover it, she made it deeper. I asked whether Mia's name had been used anywhere. "No," Elena said quickly. "Never. I would never do that." I believed she believed it. That did not comfort me. At 3:40 in the morning, I ended the call. I did not tell Elena I forgave her. I did not tell her I hated her. I told her to send me every document she had. Every loan agreement, every email, every text, every bank statement. I told her not to sign anything else. I told her to contact a lawyer in Boise and stop speaking to Caleb's creditors without advice. Then I said, You need to tell Mia the truth with me." Elena started crying again. "I can't." "You can. She'll hate me." I looked at the dark hallway leading to Mia's room. She deserves the truth before she hears a version of it from someone else. Elena did not answer. The next morning, I called Priya before I went to work. She listened to everything. When I finished, she said, "Do not pay those loans. Do not acknowledge them as yours. We need to determine whether your signature was forged and whether the lenders relied on false information." Her voice was calm, but I could hear the urgency underneath it. She referred me to a consumer fraud attorney in Portland named Samuel Ortiz. By noon, I was sitting in his office with a folder full of documents and my mother's blue mug wrapped in a dish towel inside my backpack. I had brought it without thinking. Samuel was younger than I expected, maybe early 40s, with tired eyes and a desk covered in case files. He read the loan applications slowly. He compared the signatures. He asked whether Elena had access to my identification, tax returns, social security number, employment records. "Yes," I said. "Did she ever have permission to apply for loans in your name?" "No." He nodded. "Then this is serious." I almost laughed at that. Everything had been serious for weeks, but Samuel meant something specific. He said there were two separate problems. The estate money was a family and estate issue. The forged loans were potential identity fraud. He told me not to expect instant justice. He said lenders might still try to collect before the facts were sorted out. My credit could be affected. There could be months of paperwork, disputes, and phone calls. "But," he said, tapping the application with one finger, "you have something important, a pattern. And if Elena gives you the original documents, that helps." Pattern, the word again. Not one desperate decision, not one night of weakness, a structure built out of lies. That afternoon, Elena emailed me a folder. It contained more than I expected. Loan agreements, screenshots of messages, bank transfers, emails between Caleb and a man named Warren Pike, who appeared to be the private lender. There were messages from Caleb promising Elena that the investor money was coming. Messages telling her to keep Daniel out of it until we stabilize. Then I found one from Elena. It had been sent to Caleb 4 months earlier. "Daniel's mother is getting worse. There may be money soon. I can buy us time." I stared at that sentence until the letters blurred. There are things people do that you can explain with fear. There are things people do that you can explain with weakness. And then there are sentences that show you a decision was already forming before anyone else knew they were in danger. My mother had been dying, and Elena had been calculating what could be taken from it. I printed the email. Then I put it in a folder with the others. I did not cry. Not because I was strong, because grief had become too crowded. There was no room left for one clean emotion. 2 days later, Elena came back to Portland. She did not come home. She asked to meet at a diner near the river, the kind with vinyl booths and coffee that tasted burnt no matter what time you ordered it. I agreed, because we needed to talk about Mia. Elena was already there when I arrived. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her hair was pulled back. She wore the same gray coat she had worn to my mother's funeral. The sleeves were too long over her hands. For a second, I remembered loving her. Not the woman who forged my name. Not the woman who used Mom's money as a bridge to another man's debts. I remembered the woman who had stayed up with Mia when she had the flu. The woman who knew how I liked my eggs. The woman who had once driven 3 hours to bring me clean clothes when I got stuck at a hospital during a snowstorm. That memory hurt more than anger did. Elena asked whether I had talked to a lawyer. Yes. She nodded. I'm not going to fight you. I'm not asking you to fight me. I mean it. I'll sign whatever I need to sign. I looked at her. Signing things has been part of the problem. Her face tightened. I did not say it to be cruel. I said it because it was true. We talked about Mia first. Elena wanted to tell her that we were having adult financial problems. She said Mia did not need details. I agreed that Mia did not need every detail, but I said she needed to know the money from her grandmother was no longer secure because of decisions Elena had made. Elena covered her mouth with both hands. I can't say that to her. You don't have to say it alone. She looked at me then. Do you hate me? The question sat there between the coffee cups. I looked out the window. The river was gray. A cyclist passed in a bright yellow jacket. 2 older men sat at the counter arguing about baseball. I don't know what I feel, I said. But I know I can't keep protecting you from the truth. She nodded slowly. That afternoon, we told Mia. We sat at our kitchen table. The same table where we had eaten birthdays, rushed breakfasts, takeout dinners, and all the ordinary meals that had made our life look stable from the outside. Mia came home from school with her backpack hanging off one shoulder. She saw Elena sitting there and stopped. What's going on? Elena started crying before we said anything. Mia looked at me. I told her grandma's money had been used without permission. I told her mom had made decisions that caused serious problems for our family. I told her we were working with lawyers to protect what we could. Mia did not ask about Caleb, not at first. She asked, "Is college gone?" The question broke something in Elena. She reached for Mia's hand, but Mia pulled it back. I don't know yet, I said, but I'm going to do everything I can. Mia stared at the table. Then she said, "You said Grandma saved that for me." "I know," Elena whispered. "I'm sorry." Mia looked at her. "You knew Grandma was sick." Elena closed her eyes. Mia did not yell. She did not throw anything. She picked up her backpack, walked upstairs, and shut her bedroom door. A few minutes later, I heard her crying through the floor. Elena stood in the kitchen with her hands pressed against the counter. "I ruined everything," she said. I wanted to tell her not everything was ruined, but I could not. Not yet. That night, after Elena left, I found the Blue Mountain mug in the sink. I washed it carefully, dried it, and put it in the cabinet by itself. Then I sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. There was one email I had not read yet. It was from Samuel Ortiz. The subject line said, "Important, new information from Boise lender." I clicked it. Samuel wrote that Warren Pike, the private lender, had sent a formal demand letter. Not to Elena, to me. And attached to it was a document I had never seen before. A personal guarantee dated 2 years earlier. My name was on it. But the date meant Elena had started building this second life long before my mother got sick. Long before Caleb asked for help. Long before I had any reason to question the woman sitting across from me at breakfast. The first transfer had not been the beginning. It had only been the moment the hidden life ran out of places to hide. The guarantee was dated 2 years earlier. I read it at the kitchen table while Mia cried behind her closed bedroom door, and the dishwasher ran through a cycle neither of us had started. 2 years. Before my mother got sick. Before Caleb's business collapsed. Before Elena began telling me she was overwhelmed, lonely, and scared. The document said I had personally guaranteed a line of credit for Caleb Dawson Consulting. It listed my job title, my salary, our old address, and the last 4 digits of my social security number. It also listed a collateral source: my mother's house. For a moment, I could not understand what I was seeing. Mom's house had been in her name until she died. 2 years earlier, it was not mine to offer. It was not Elena's to mention. It was simply the yellow house where my mother still lived alone, watered her plants, watched old crime shows, and kept emergency cash inside an oatmeal container. But Elena had used it anyway. Not legally. Not successfully. The lender had not been able to place a lien because the property was not mine at the time. Still, she had given them the address. She had used my mother's home as proof that there was something behind me worth taking. I called Samuel. He answered on the second ring. "I saw it," he said before I could speak. "What does it mean?" "It means this started earlier than we thought." I looked at the blue mountain mug in the cabinet. "What happens now?" Samuel was quiet for a second. "Now we separate what was forged from what was voluntarily signed. We protect your credit. We challenge the guarantee. And we document everything." It was not the answer I wanted. I wanted him to say the document meant nothing. I wanted him to say the lender would disappear, Caleb would be found, the money would return, and my daughter's future would be restored by Friday. Instead, he gave me a list. Freeze your credit. Change every password. Notify the lenders in writing. Do not speak to Warren Pike directly. Preserve every message from Elena and Caleb. Open a separate account. Prepare for a long process. Long process. That was the phrase that followed me for months. The next morning, Elena came to the house to collect more clothes. She stood in the doorway with a cardboard box in her arms. Mia had left early for school without saying goodbye to either of us. I did not invite Elena in right away. She noticed. "I know you changed the locks," she said. "Yes. I'm not here to take anything." I looked at the box. "You came with a box." Her mouth tightened. "I deserve that." I did not answer. She stepped inside after I moved aside. The house smelled like toast and laundry detergent. Ordinary smells. They made everything feel worse. Elena walked toward the bedroom, then stopped when she saw the papers on the kitchen table. She knew immediately. "You found the old guarantee." "It has my name on it." "I know." "Why?" Her shoulders dropped. For the first time, she did not offer a softer version. She sat down at the table. "I was afraid," she said. "Of what?" "Of being nobody." I stared at her. She looked exhausted, but I had learned that exhaustion did not erase responsibility. She told me that Caleb had contacted her 2 years earlier. He had said he was building something real this time. A wellness business. A clean start. He said he needed help proving to investors that he had support. Elena had believed him because she wanted to believe that someone still saw her as more than a wife, a mother, an employee who smiled at parents and cleaned up after other people's children. She said she did not plan to use my name at first. Then Caleb told her it was only paperwork. Then he told her the loan would never be used. Then he told her he would fix it. Every step had been small enough for her to cross, until she was standing somewhere she could not return from. "You could have told me," I said. "I was ashamed." "You were ashamed after you did it. Before that, you made choices." She started crying. I did not move toward her. That was the sacrifice I had to make. Not money. Not the house. The sacrifice was giving up the version of myself who would comfort her first and ask questions later. Elena admitted that she had known Caleb's business was failing long before my mother died. She admitted that the Boise apartment had been partly for him and partly for her. She had imagined it as a place where she could disappear from the life she had damaged. Then Mom died. The estate money became available, and Elena convinced herself she could borrow it, fix Caleb's debts, pay it back before I noticed, and return to our life as if nothing had happened. She said she had not wanted to hurt Mia. I believed that. But I also understood something I had never understood before. People can love you and still be willing to use what belongs to you. Love does not make betrayal impossible. Sometimes it only makes betrayal easier to hide. Elena signed a written statement for Samuel that afternoon. She admitted she had forged my signature on the loan applications and guarantees. She admitted she had moved estate funds without permission. She admitted she had concealed the loans from me. It was not a confession that fixed anything. It was a beginning. The lender still contacted me. My credit score still dropped before the disputes were resolved. I still spent lunch breaks on hold with people who asked security questions about debts I had never agreed to. Some days I came home from work and sat in my car for 20 minutes because I could not make myself go inside. Mia stopped talking much. She went to school. She did her homework. She ate dinner in her room. One night, I found her sitting on the floor beside her bed, looking through photos on her phone. She had found a picture of Grandma Ruth holding her at age 5, both of them wearing paper crowns from a birthday party. Mia looked up at me. Did Mom love Grandma? The question was so quiet, I almost missed it. I sat beside her on the floor. Yes, I said. Then how could she do that? I looked at the photo. Grandma was laughing in it. Mia had frosting on her nose. The room behind them was full of balloons and paper plates. I don't know, I said. Sometimes people love someone and still make choices that hurt them. That doesn't make the choices okay. Mia nodded, but I could tell she was not satisfied. Neither was I. 3 weeks later, Samuel called with the first good news. The Boise lender had agreed to suspend collection while the forgery investigation moved forward. Elena's written statement, the document timeline, and the messages from Caleb had made it difficult for them to treat me as a willing guarantor. It was not over, but it gave us time. Priya also found something in Mom's estate records. Before she died, Mom had created a small education trust for Mia. It was separate from the savings account Elena had accessed. The trust was not large, but it had been protected from the transfers because Mom had set it up years earlier and never mentioned it to anyone except Priya. When Priya told me, I sat in her office and cried for the first time. Not loudly, just quietly, with my hands over my face. Mom had known enough to leave one door locked. The trust would not pay for every year of college. It would not replace what Elena took. But it meant Mia still had something. A beginning that had not been touched by Caleb, by Boise, by forged signatures, or by the damage inside our marriage. When I told Mia, she did not smile at first. She asked, "Grandma did that?" "Yes." She looked down at the blue mountain mug I had brought with me. Then she said, "She always planned for everything." I laughed through my tears. "Yes," I said. She did. The divorce took almost a year. There were no dramatic courtroom scenes, no speeches, no moment when Elena's family suddenly understood everything and apologized. Some of them still believed I had been too harsh. Some believed Elena had made mistakes because she had been unhappy. Maybe both things could be true in different ways. But the records were clear. Elena accepted responsibility for the debts in her name. She agreed to repay a portion of the estate funds through the sale of her car, savings from her retirement account, and a payment plan she would carry for years. She also agreed to cooperate fully with the fraud dispute. Caleb was eventually found in Nevada after trying to open another business under a different name. I did not follow every detail after that. There were civil cases, there were creditors, there were consequences that moved slowly, like everything else. I did not need to watch him fall. He had already taken enough space in my life. Elena moved into a small apartment across town. She started working longer hours. She went to counseling, according to Dana. I did not ask for updates. Mia saw her on weekends at first. The visits were awkward. Then they became less awkward. Not healed, not normal, just possible. That was more than I expected. By the next spring, Mia had chosen a college 2 hours away. Not because it was the cheapest, though money mattered now. She chose it because she liked the journalism program, and the campus had a library with tall windows. The education trust covered her first year. I took on extra shifts. I sold Mom's yellow house to a young couple with a baby and a golden retriever that kept running across the front yard. Before the sale, I went through the house one last time. The rooms were empty. The walls showed pale rectangles where Mom's pictures had hung. The kitchen table was gone. The drawers were empty. I stood at the sink and held the chipped blue mountain mug. For years, I thought it belonged in that house. Then I thought it belonged to the marriage I had lost. But it did not belong to either. It belonged to me. I took it home. On the morning Mia left for college, we loaded her boxes into my truck before sunrise. Her dorm room had room for a mini fridge, a desk, and a narrow bed. She brought too many sweaters and not enough towels, exactly like Mom would have predicted. Before we left, Mia stood in the kitchen holding the blue mug. "Can I take this?" she asked. I looked at it for a moment. The chip near the handle, the crooked mountain, the small crack in the glaze that had been there as long as I could remember. Then I said, "Yes." She wrapped it in one of her old t-shirts and placed it carefully in a box labeled kitchen. At the dorm, after we carried up the last bag, Mia hugged me for a long time. "I'll be okay," she said. I believed her. Not because life had become fair. Not because every debt was gone or every hurt had been repaired. I believed her because she had seen what happened and still chose a future. On the drive home, I stopped at a diner outside Salem. I ordered coffee. The waitress brought it in a plain white mug. For a second, I looked at the empty seat across from me. Then I opened my laptop, checked the first payment from Elena's repayment plan, and closed it again. Outside, rain moved softly across the parking lot. Inside, the coffee was too hot. I held the mug with both hands and watched the road for a while. For the first time in years, nothing was waiting for me to fix.